I bought my parents' house to save them. Then my brother locked me out of it. The night I finally stopped loving my family was the night I stood outside my own front door in the middle of a Colorado snowstorm while my younger brother laughed at me through the window. And the worst part? My mom laughed too. Not nervous laughter, not uncomfortable laughter, real laughter. Like humiliating me was genuinely entertaining to her. I still remember the way the porch light reflected off the snow while I stood there holding my work bag, exhausted after a 14-hour shift, trying to process what was happening. Because 4 years earlier I had sacrificed everything to save those people from losing that house. And somehow, I became the enemy anyway. My name's Ryan. I'm 30 years old, and until recently I genuinely believed if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, and loved my family enough, eventually they'd love me the same way back. That belief almost destroyed my life. Growing up, there were two completely different standards inside our house. Tyler got understanding, I got pressure. Tyler got excuses, I got expectations. If Tyler failed a class, my parents blamed the teacher. If I got anything less than perfect, suddenly I wasn't applying myself. My younger brother Tyler was what my dad called charismatic, which honestly was just another word for irresponsible. Tyler could walk into a room and instantly make people laugh. He was confident, loud, social, reckless, the kind of person who could fail repeatedly and somehow still convince everyone he was secretly destined for greatness. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the useful one. And in families like mine, useful children become resources before they become people. My dad, Greg, spent most of my childhood bouncing between terrible business ideas. Landscaping company, motorcycle flipping, online sports betting, crypto, life coaching. I'm not joking. Every 6 months there was another big opportunity that somehow always ended with debt. Mom enabled all of it, always. If Dad failed, she blamed stress. If Tyler failed, she blamed bad luck. But when I struggled, suddenly responsibility mattered. So by 16, I already understood something important. Nobody was coming to save me. I worked construction summers during high school, warehouse shifts during winter breaks, trade school after graduation. By 26, I was working commercial HVAC installation across Colorado. The money was decent, but the work was brutal. Freezing rooftops during winter. Attics hot enough to make you dizzy during summer. Bleeding knuckles, destroyed knees, constant overtime, but I kept pushing because I had goals. I wanted stability, a house someday, a family eventually, a normal life. Unfortunately, my family saw my stability as something they were entitled to. If Tyler needed rent money, Mom called me. If Dad's truck broke down, they called me. If utilities were overdue, they called me. Every single time. And every single time it came wrapped in the same sentence. Family helps family, Ryan. Funny how that only applied to me. Everything finally collapsed in 2019. I was finishing an emergency repair job during a snowstorm when my mom called me crying so hard, I genuinely thought somebody died. I pulled my work van onto the shoulder immediately. Mom, what happened? She could barely speak. We're losing the house. At first I didn't understand. Then Dad got on the phone. Turns out they hadn't paid the mortgage in nearly a year. And nobody told me. The bank had already started foreclosure proceedings. I remember sitting there gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands cramped while snow hammered the windshield. What happened to the money? I asked. Silence. Then Dad got defensive immediately. You think this is easy for me? That told me everything. He'd blown it. Again. Later, I found out he'd burned through savings trying to launch another failed business venture while Tyler contributed absolutely nothing despite being 25 years old and still living at home. And somehow, within 15 minutes of that phone call, the entire situation quietly became my responsibility. Mom kept crying. Ryan, please, we can't lose this house. Tyler jumped in too. Bro, you make good money. You'll figure something out. That sentence still makes me angry. You'll figure something out. Not we. Not us. Me, always me. I should have walked away right then, honestly, but they were still my family. And I still believed love could be earned through sacrifice. So I tried saving them. I met with banks, mortgage lenders, attorneys, financial advisors. I emptied savings accounts I'd spent years building. Eventually, the only option left was buying the property outright myself. $200,000, nearly everything I had, loans for the rest. I remember signing those papers feeling terrified, but also weirdly hopeful. Because deep down, I thought maybe this would finally make my family appreciate me. Maybe this would finally make me enough. That was my biggest mistake. When foreclosure officially stopped, my mom cried and hugged me. Dad shook my hand. Tyler slapped my shoulder and said, "Knew you'd handle it." That was it. No deep gratitude, no emotional moment, no realization of what I sacrificed, just expectation, like saving them was simply my role in the family. I let them continue living there rent-free because they promised things would change. Dad promised steady work. Mom promised budgeting. Tyler promised he'd finally get serious about life. None of it happened, not one thing. In fact, things somehow got worse. Because once the pressure disappeared, their entitlement exploded. Dad barely worked. Mom kept spending recklessly. Tyler became even lazier because now there were zero consequences keeping reality in check. Meanwhile, I paid. Property taxes, insurance, repairs, emergency, plumbing, utilities during winter roof, repairs, appliance, replacements, everything. And the craziest part? They started acting like I was the problem. Every time I asked for responsibility, suddenly I was controlling. Every boundary became arrogance. Every concern became judgment. One night I came home after a brutal shift and found Tyler throwing a party in the garage. Beer everywhere, music blasting, random strangers using my tools as seats. One drunk guy literally spilled alcohol on equipment worth thousands. I snapped. I told everyone to leave. Tyler got in my face immediately. "You can't control everybody just because you have money." Money, that word hit me hard. Because suddenly I realized that's all they saw when they looked at me. Not Ryan, not family, just money. And my parents defended him. Mom actually said, "You're being too harsh." Harsh, I saved their home, paid every major bill, destroyed my 20s working overtime to protect them, and somehow I was harsh. That night I sat in my truck for almost an hour afterward just staring at the steering wheel thinking, why do I feel like the unwanted guest in my own life? Then Ashley entered the picture. Ashley was chaos in human form. The kind of person who always had drama surrounding her but somehow convinced herself she was always the victim. Within 3 months, she basically moved into the house without asking me. Using utilities, eating food, parking in the garage, inviting friends over constantly. And Tyler acted like questioning any of it made me unreasonable. One afternoon I came over and found Ashley's dog had destroyed expensive insulation materials I'd stored in the basement for work. Thousands of dollars gone, I completely lost it. I told Tyler she either contributes financially or moves out. Ashley immediately started fake crying. Tyler started screaming. Dad stepped between us and said something I'll never forget. "If you're gonna hold money over everyone's head, maybe you shouldn't come around anymore." That sentence shattered something inside me. Because I realized they genuinely believed I owed them endless sacrifice with zero authority, zero respect, and zero appreciation. So I stopped visiting unless absolutely necessary, still paid everything, still handled repairs, still protected the property. But emotionally, I started disconnecting, and my family noticed. Suddenly Mom started accusing me of thinking I'm better than everyone. Dad said money changed me. Tyler called me selfish. Meanwhile, they continued living entirely off my sacrifices. The hypocrisy was insane. But I kept tolerating it because deep down I still hoped things would improve. Then New Year's Eve happened, and everything finally exploded. December 31st, 2023. Freezing cold. Snow everywhere. I'd spent almost 14 hours handling emergency heating failures across the city because winter storms had half Colorado panicking. I was exhausted, cold, starving. All I wanted was sleep. When I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed multiple cars outside the house. Music blasting, lights everywhere. Tyler's truck blocking the garage. I already felt irritation building. But then I walked to the front door and realized my key didn't work. At first I thought the lock jammed. Then I tried again, nothing, again, still nothing. Then suddenly the door opened slightly. Tyler stood there grinning, drunk. Ashley laughing behind him, music booming inside my house. "You don't live here anymore," he said. At first I genuinely thought he was joking. Then Dad appeared holding a beer. Instead of fixing the situation, he shrugged and said, "You should have called first." I felt my chest tighten. "Open the door," Tyler smirked. "Nah," my mom walked up beside them smiling, actually smiling. "You've been acting like this place belongs to you," she said. I stared at her in disbelief. Belongs to me? I bought it. I paid every single bill tied to it for 4 years. I saved them from foreclosure. And somehow they saw me as the outsider. Ashley suddenly shouted from inside, "Call the cops if you're so obsessed." Everybody laughed. Everybody. And that was the exact moment something inside me died, because humiliation from strangers hurts. Humiliation from family rewires your brain. I stood there in the snow realizing these people genuinely hated me for refusing to let them destroy me completely. And suddenly I felt something terrifying. Nothing. No guilt. No sadness. No desperation to fix things. Just clarity, cold, sharp clarity. I got back into my truck, drove away. And for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to save my family. The next morning, I called an attorney, best decision I ever made. Her name was Vanessa Carter, and within 10 minutes of reviewing my paperwork, she looked at me like I was clinically insane. You've been paying for the mortgage payoff, taxes, repairs, utilities, and insurance, while allowing multiple adults to live there without formal rental agreements. Yeah, she leaned back slowly. Ryan, your family is taking advantage of you. Hearing a stranger say it out loud hit harder than I expected. Because deep down, I already knew, I just didn't want it to be true. Vanessa started organizing everything immediately. Ownership documents, bank transfers, repair invoices, insurance records, tax payments, screenshots of text, utility, bills, every single thing tied directly back to me. Meanwhile, my family had contributed almost nothing. Then Vanessa said the sentence I'd been avoiding in my head since New Year's Eve. You need to evict them. I physically flinched hearing it. Evict my parents? My little brother? What kind of son does that? But another part of me kept replaying Tyler laughing while I stood outside in the snow. And slowly, guilt started turning into anger. The eviction notices went out 3 days later, and all hell exploded. Mom called me screaming so loudly I had to pull my phone away from my ear. How could you do this to your own mother? Dad left voicemails threatening lawsuits. Tyler sent me paragraphs calling me greedy, narcissistic, abusive, selfish, pathetic, and obsessed with power. Ashley posted vague Facebook statuses about toxic men using money to control vulnerable women. That one almost made me laugh, because apparently living rent-free for years now made them vulnerable. Then the extended family got involved. That part honestly hurt the most, because my parents lied to everybody. Suddenly the story became, Ryan is throwing his elderly parents onto the street after becoming rich. Nobody mentioned foreclosure. Nobody mentioned me saving the house. Nobody mentioned 4 years of unpaid living, just evil Ryan. My Aunt Karen called me crying, how could you betray your mother like this? And something inside me finally snapped. I said, then let them move in with you. Silence, then immediate excuses. Well, your uncle's health. We don't really have space. Things are complicated. Exactly. Everybody loves judging sacrifice until they're asked to make one themselves. Meanwhile, Tyler escalated everything. He started damaging the property intentionally. Punch holes in walls, broken cabinets, destroyed garage shelving. Vanessa told me to document everything. So every time I visited the property, I filmed it. And Tyler absolutely hated that. One afternoon, he stormed into the driveway while I was recording damage. You think you're so smart with your little camera? I stayed calm. Move. He shoved me hard, big mistake. Because my security camera caught the entire thing. And suddenly Tyler realized this wasn't family drama anymore. This was legal. Real consequences, real evidence, real accountability. The exact things people like Tyler spend their whole lives avoiding. Court took months. And during those months, my family somehow became even uglier. The entitlement got crazier by the week. At one point, Dad genuinely argued that because they'd raised me, I morally owed them lifelong housing. Vanessa looked at me afterward and whispered, your father basically argued parenthood was an investment plan. Even the judge looked exhausted dealing with them. Then came Tyler's brilliant strategy. He tried claiming partial ownership through continuous occupancy, basically arguing that because they'd lived there for years, they had rights to the property. Vanessa nearly laughed. Because unlike Tyler, adults live in reality. And reality included purchase documents, recorded ownership, payment history, tax records, insurance under my name, repair invoices under my name, bank records tied directly to me. The judge dismantled their argument in minutes. I still remember Tyler staring at me across the courtroom like I betrayed him. That look fascinated me, because people like Tyler genuinely believe accountability is cruelty. The eviction order finally passed, and suddenly reality hit them all at once. They actually had to leave. No more manipulation, no more guilt, no more using me like an ATM. Mom cried dramatically in the hallway afterward. Dad looked furious. Ashley kept muttering about corrupt courts. Tyler stared at me with pure hatred. And honestly, for the first time in years, I didn't feel scared of any of them anymore. Because once you stop needing someone's approval, they lose power over you. The sheriff arrived on a freezing February morning. I barely slept the night before. Part of me still hoped my family would suddenly realize how insane everything had become. That maybe they'd apologize, maybe we'd fix things somehow. Instead, chaos, absolute chaos, Mom crying loudly for attention, Ashley filming TikToks in the driveway talking about abuse, Dad screaming at deputies, Tyler pacing like an angry pit bull, and me? I just felt tired, deeply tired, because these were still people I once loved, even after everything. The deputies supervised while they packed, and that's when things got ugly. Tyler intentionally smashed dishes. Dad damaged garage shelves. Ashley dumped garbage all over the basement. At one point, Tyler walked past me carrying boxes and whispered, "You think you won?" I looked him dead in the eye and said quietly, "No, I think you lost yourself years ago." That actually stunned him silent for a second, because deep down, he knew it was true. By evening, the house was finally empty. And when I walked through it afterward, I almost cried. Not because I missed them, because of what they left behind. Destroyed walls, broken appliances, trash everywhere. My tools missing, furniture damaged. The house looked violated, like years of resentment had physically exploded across every room. And standing there alone in that wrecked living room, I finally understood something painful. My family never loved me. They loved what I provided. There's a difference. A huge difference. And once I stopped providing, they became cruel immediately. The silence afterward felt strange. No screaming phone calls, no emergencies, no demands for money, no guilt trips. And slowly my life started improving. I slept better, started therapy, started reconnecting with friends. Started dating again. That's when I met Hannah. And Hannah noticed something about me almost immediately. I apologized constantly, for everything. If dinner took too long, if I got tired, if I disagreed about something small. One night she asked me, "Why do you act like existing is inconveniencing people?" That question wrecked me, because I realized my family trained me to believe my value only existed in what I could provide, not who I was. But karma wasn't finished yet. About 8 months after the eviction, I got a call from a detective. At first, I thought it was about property damage. It wasn't. It was about Tyler. Turns out Tyler had been using MY property address for scams even after the eviction. Fake business loans, credit fraud, online marketplace scams, multiple victims. The detective actually asked if I knew anything about Tyler using stolen identities. I felt physically sick hearing it, because suddenly every missing piece connected. The unexplained mail, the missing documents, the weird financial notices. Tyler hadn't just been lazy. He'd been spiraling into criminal behavior for years, and my parents protected him the entire time. Then came the part that made everything even crazier. Dad had co-signed one of Tyler's fraudulent applications without reading it properly, meaning Dad accidentally implicated himself. The man spent years defending Tyler blindly, and Tyler dragged him straight into a criminal investigation. That's karma, pure karma. Tyler got arrested 3 weeks later, fraud charges, identity theft, forgery. And suddenly the golden child wasn't so golden anymore. Mom stopped posting family photos online after that. Funny how quickly reality destroys denial. A few days after Tyler's arrest, Dad called me for the first time in almost a year. He sounded older, smaller somehow, like life finally punched through his ego, and for one tiny second I genuinely thought maybe this was it. Maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he'd finally admit everything. Instead he said, "Can't you help your brother?" I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. After everything, after the foreclosure, the manipulation, the humiliation, the eviction, the scams, that was still his instinct. Protect Tyler, sacrifice Ryan. I sat there quietly for a second before saying, "No." Dad got angry immediately. "You're really gonna abandon your family?" And that's when I finally said the thing I'd needed to say for years. "You abandoned me first. You just did it so slowly I didn't notice until it was too late." Silence, complete silence. Then I hung up, and honestly, that conversation healed something inside me, because for the first time in my life I chose myself. It's been almost 2 years now. The house is beautiful again. I renovated everything. New floors, new walls. New kitchen, new memories. The garage Tyler trashed. Now it's my workshop, peaceful, quiet, mine. And 6 months ago I proposed to Hannah. She said yes. The night after our engagement, we sat on the back porch watching snow fall across the yard my family once tried to take from me. And Hannah asked softly, "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it honestly. Then I said, "I miss the family I wanted them to be." Because that's the hardest part, not losing toxic people, losing hope they'll ever change. Meanwhile, karma kept cooking behind the scenes. Tyler eventually took a plea deal. Dad's credit got destroyed because of the fraud fallout. Ashley left Tyler almost immediately after the money disappeared. And the real spicy part, my parents ended up renting a tiny duplex less than 15 minutes away from the house they used to call theirs. Sometimes I drive past them accidentally. Dad looks exhausted now. Mom avoids eye contact completely. And Tyler, last I heard, he tells people I stole his future, which is honestly the perfect ending, because even after everything, he still thinks somebody else ruined his life. Not the scams, not the lies, not the entitlement, me. And that's when you realize people like Tyler never really grow. They just look for new victims, but not me anymore, never again. Because the night my family locked me out of my own house, they thought they were humiliating me. What they actually did was set me free.